short notice and with little preparation. Nevertheless, if we think of what it is we're trying to do when we gather like this on a Sunday, after all, it's not communicating knowledge as such. We've more or less, all of us have read the same books, we've heard the same lectures. We sort of know the basic principles. The more important thing is when you gather together with a common thought or a common aspiration, we strengthen those thoughts and those aspirations. So all of us here as devotees seeking God, seeking spiritual life, when we gather like this in front of Sri Ramakrishna on Sunday morning and share some thoughts together, it is to strengthen our own spiritual life. So really what I say or don't say is irrelevant. The second thing is that if I say anything wrong, Swami is here to correct me. And if I finish within 5 or 10 minutes, then maybe we could have Chitra can sing more songs. So firstly, the subject is worshiping God. Oh, one more thing I should say is, despite all what I just said, the person who benefits the most from any lecture is the speaker, because you're forced to think about the topic and arrange the thoughts in your mind. So if all of you go to sleep, it's okay. But the subject is a very appropriate time to be discussing this. We just finished sort of a sequence of pujas, very big pujas. Dasara, 10 days of worship, and then we just had Deepavali and Kali Puja. And through that time you can see the amount of enthusiasm and devotion and fervor that it generates amongst people. When we have various events at the Vedanta Society, you see sometimes 10 people come. Maybe when we have Raj Yoga discussion, not even 10 people. When we have a seminar, maybe 50 people. When we have a puja, 500 people hanging from the ceiling. And so what is it in this? There's something that is touching people, that is animating them, that is attracting them, and it's not forced. Nobody's telling them to do it. It's something coming from within. So what is that? Firstly, there is the general spiritual ideal that all of us have of whether we call it God or not, certainly the concept of goodness, something that transcends the limitations of our world in which we have a notion of good and evil. And here there is a spiritual concept that is able to give expression to our highest ideals. In the case of Durga Puja, in the case of Kali Puja, Deepavali, is the idea of good overcoming evil. And we don't waste too much time in trying to define what we mean by good and evil. We just have some sort of intuitive idea. And through the worship, we try to reinforce that idea within us. So God, however we may define it, however we may conceptualize it, God represents to us the force of goodness, all our highest ideals of goodness. And you may have abstract ideas or concrete ideas, but somehow you take all of those and give them a form. We just had a beautiful reading in which we talked about the importance of the vigraha, of idol, some form in which puts together in a concrete form our highest ideal. It's the embodiment of our highest ideals. And it encourages us, really, to feel those ideas as being real. It's hard to touch a thought. We have thoughts, we know thoughts are real, but you can't touch them. And to the extent that we're very sensual in our approach, the ability to see, to hear, to smell, to touch has a great impact. So if we can capture those highest ideals in a form like that, it is very encouraging for us. But it's not just a form, it's not just a statue. After all, there are many statues. This vigraha, this pratima that we worship, there is a personal relationship we add to it. It's not just a general form, it's not even something we say it's an embodiment of our ideal, some high ideal of goodness or spirituality. Has to be a personal relationship. One thing I've touched, I don't come so much from that kind of tradition, but I've noticed here a lot, especially during Durga Puja, there is a very, very strong emotional link to the mother goddess. Now, our mother, which is Ma Durga, or some people think our daughter-in-law. Some people think like that, and they just don't say it. They do all sorts of things to reflect that. They take a lot of pain and effort to dress it properly and adorn it. And it's charming actually. If you see the preparations for the puja, all the devotees, the volunteers, how they come and spend many hours getting the pratima ready. Okay? This is the personal component of our relationship. And then we have, in the time of Dasara, 10 days of worship. That's not trivial. That's a long time. And the point of that length of worship is that your mind is occupied with those thoughts for a long period of time. Now, as you all know, we are according to our minds. As our mind is set, so are we. Whatever thoughts you entertain, whatever thoughts you encourage in your mind, that is who you are. As phenomenal beings, as empirical beings, you are your thoughts. So imagine the impact of 10 days. And I think in more traditional settings, this is done morning and evening. We do this worship, not just in the evening, and not just on a couple of days. Imagine 10 days of that, constantly holding that thought. What's the result? You feel somehow close to God. You feel this God is real, and I feel close to God. And it starts impacting on the rest of your life too. When you eat, you're thinking of worship. When you're sleeping even, in your dreams, you have... I remember, as I said, I don't belong too much to this formal worship tradition, but I'll tell you, some years ago, I was in our village. I come from a village in India, and we have a temple, Arthanarishwara temple. And for some reason, it was Dasara time. And there was nobody to do the puja, so the responsibility fell on me. And of course, I was totally ignorant of what I'm supposed to do, but we respect our elders, so if they were told, this is what you've got to do, did it. But the point is, it started from relative ignorance of what this is all about. By the end of a number of days of that, it doesn't even take 10 days, I started dreaming of that. I mean, I started, whatever I was doing during the day, that was the only thing filling my mind. So, regardless of what state of mind we start with, if you can occupy your mind with the thought of God for a period of time, that's what you're going to reflect. And so that's very important from the point of view of our own spiritual life. Now, in some sense, we're not, of course, although I speak of this in terms of Durga Puja and Kali Puja, it's common in all traditions. Worship is common in all traditions. In fact, there's even an overlap that major worships occur roughly around the same time. There seems to be something there. All traditions have this in some form or other. And just as in this tradition, these are meant to clarify our concept of God and our relationship with God. It's interesting that according to the Indian calendar, this period of puja is now followed by Kartik Masam, which is what we're in the month of Kartika. And Kartik Masam has a very different tone than the previous month. This is a month for prayer and fasting and meditation and reflection. So in some sense, that's what we are doing now. So here's the time now to ask ourselves, what is this worship that we've engaged in so intensely for the last number of weeks or last month? Who is being worshipped, or what is being worshipped? What is God? And what is our relationship? It's the time to dive inwards and ask ourselves these questions. Swami Vivekananda analyzes religion in general. It has three components: philosophy, mythology, and rituals. The philosophical portion of religion enunciates the general principles. In the case of Vedanta, it's the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, the Gita, they tell us the abstract principles. They tell you, as an individual, you are divine. You are a manifestation of spirit. They tell that everything here is a manifestation of spirit. And they even say it in this form that this is not a theoretical principle just to be stated, but to be experienced. Then coming from these abstract principles, the philosophy, we have what we call in general mythology, but really what it means is lives of great people who embody those teachings, who have practiced and realized to some extent those teachings. That is very abstractly called mythology because sometimes it goes back so far in time before we have accurate records. But you can look at a person like Buddha. Buddha is a historical reality. Look at his life and you see there the embodiment of these highest ideals that are taught of in the philosophy. Or Krishna. Now Krishna, you may ask, was he a historical figure? You may ask about the historicity. But whether he is historical or not, the Gita is real. Gita is ascribed to him as his teaching. So if you want to understand Krishna, the Gita is a good place to start. And then from the mythology comes the rituals. That is the observances, the prayers, the adoration. And these are meant to make the abstract principles that became a little bit more concrete through the lives of the great people become even more concrete through our own personal involvement. As you know, there is no growth as long as you're a spectator. Anything in which you're a spectator, you yourself will not grow, no matter how many how much television you may see, or how many movies you may see about the courtroom. Doesn't make you a lawyer. If you're a lawyer, it's quite something different, or if you have to be a doctor. It's only through participation that there is growth and any kind of experience and achievement. So rituals throws us into that. We cannot anymore sit at the periphery and say, just exchange ideas or nod our head while like some of you are doing now, somebody else is talking. But rituals throws us into the process itself, and thereby opens up the possibility for our growth. It's interesting, by the way, what we're doing right now is a kind of ritual. And certainly, from my point of view, it's throwing me right into other things. So this ritual is certainly helping me to grow. And by the way, I might also add that as my teacher was Swami Sarvagatam, and what he told me was that when you speak from the podium, always wear a chadar. And his point is that this is spiritual practice. It's not anything different from the same way you would go to the shrine room and sit for meditation. So rituals in general, and interpreted quite broadly, throw you into the actual activity and thereby connect you in an immediate way to these principles and personalities. And as I said, all traditions have this in some form or other. Now in formal worship, Swami has explained to me, there are various stages that you have to go through. So when he sits for worship here, first there is a prayer. All worship starts with prayer, because you're reaching out to something beyond yourself. And so prayer is a way of somehow reaching beyond yourself. And it's not a question of knowing, but an appeal to something higher than ourselves, by which enabling us to move forward. Following with prayer, there is actually there's prayer, and then there's purification of all our surroundings, because something important, something related to God is going to take place there. And then we ask in our prayer that obstacles be removed. An acknowledgement of power higher than ourselves, that we need help here in the activity that we're about to begin, this worship. So prayer, purification, and removal of obstacles. Then, the second step is divinization, that is making everything around you holy. The articles, the person doing the prayer, everything you touch or sprinkle water on, or through a mantra, you divinize all these articles. I mean, mostly you're telling yourself everything around here is divine. Third step is consecration. That is, these are all dedicated to the ideal being worshipped. Consecration of all the items around you and the person doing the worship. And then invocation of the Lord. Actually, the invocation of the Lord is there from the beginning, in a way, but here, invocation of the Lord even in the worshipper. This is where Swami sometimes puts a flower on himself and then worship. That is, the worshipper also is embodiment or manifestation of the Lord. And then there is various forms of mantras and hymns that are chanted, and then an offering to the deity. Prayers, flowers, food, and so on. And finally, there is a self-surrender at the end of this, saying that, and you all know that prayer, that perhaps if there's any shortcoming in what I've done, please forgive me, and I surrender good and bad, everything to God. So these are the steps in formal worship. Now it raises a couple of questions for us when we think about this. Firstly, first question, we offer, for example, food to God. Does God eat? Does he eat? Does she eat? Does it eat? Sri Ramakrishna, how do we answer a question like that? You see, if the question doesn't occur to you, guaranteed it will occur to your children, if they're seeing it. You're offering food to God. Does God eat? You know, there are many stories in our tradition about this kind of question. But in our own time, we have some instances that help us to understand. Not really understand, but it's something useful to keep in mind. Sri Ramakrishna, as you know, when he took up the post of the temple priest, his question was, is God real? People before him had served as priests, there is a formal way of worshipping. He studied that, he knows that. But his question was, is God real? And he also wanted to know if when you offer something to the deity, when does Mother eat? Well, you know the story of his life and how he struggled day and night to answer that question. But he came to a point where he had to say, he was doing the formal worship and offering the food to God, and then he would somehow, mystically, he would say, wait, Mother, let me offer the food before you eat it. So for him, whether we understand the story or not, for him, the question was answered. God is real, does accept our worship, and even to the extent of partaking of the food offering. Do I say that somehow that is now something you can understand rationally? No, it's not. Nevertheless, it's the experience of Sri Ramakrishna. Also, Holy Mother told us something. A devotee asked her, does the Master really partake of the food we offer? And she said, yes, he does. A subtle light comes from his eyes and touches all the articles of food that are offered, and through that he accepted. Again, what do you understand by that? What do I understand by that? I don't know. But if Holy Mother says something, I take it seriously. There is something going on, some relationship. Therefore, you can at least set your mind at ease that when you offer, make the food offering, there is an acceptance. But one thing important in all of this is that the essence of all of this worship is love. You see, that loving, unless there is a feeling of loving relationship, a devotional idea, that activity is just an activity, it's not worship. That's sort of fundamental in terms of what Vedanta teaches as our spiritual goal and our spiritual journey. But before I delve a little bit deeper onto that, let's take one step back again And let's go back to this issue of is God real? That to whom we're praying and offering, is it all our imagination? Or is God real? And the answer I want to suggest is both are real. It is our imagination and God is real. So this word imagination is a very important one to understand for spiritual aspects. It has in common parlance a sort of connotation of being something which is childish or something which may be practiced by children but not by adults or anybody who has any kind of maturity. In fact, this is not correct. We are a result of our imagination. We are more governed by our imagination than we somehow are ready or willing to accept. And that works whether it is positive things or negative things. Some people imagine negative things. They occupy their minds and those negative things become real. And some have a positive imagination that becomes real. We are, after all, moving in relative ignorance. What we know is precious little. No matter how much we may try to think and analyze and figure out something, the extent of our knowledge is still relatively little compared to what is to be known. There is a saying that if you're in a dark room and you strike a lamp, well, it's true that little area is lighted, but you also become aware of the great darkness around you. So, in some sense, our trying to know things is really quite limited. We're moving in relative ignorance, and so how do we make up for that which we don't know? Surmise, speculation, conjecture, imagination. We're doing that constantly. So then the question is, and you see whether even amongst people who achieve great things, you see imagination is a very important role. For example, have you ever observed athletes when they're training or just before they make a major event? In their mind, they play through the whole sequence of steps by which they're going to, whatever it is they're supposed to do. So the athlete imagines a successful performance. Similarly, you can also fill your mind with thoughts of gloom and disaster. And the result is that you will manufacture exactly that kind of reality around yourself. We are, according to our imagination, our mind in general, our thoughts. And our growth, therefore, depends on our imagination. So why is it that we suddenly want to reject that imagination when it comes to spiritual life? There's no reason to reject it. It is partly an imagination until it's your experience that God is accepting my worship, that God is listening to my prayers. Part of it is imagination, and it's good imagination. But it's not entirely just imagination, because Vedanta says it's also real. It is the experience of rishis, the experience for great teachers. They say very clearly, God is real. Sri Ramakrishna said it in so many words. God is real. In fact, he went further and said nothing else is real. God is the only reality. He said very clearly, Mother is real. If you think of God in some Vedantic sense, like Brahman or Spirit, he said Mother is real. And if you think that Sri Ramakrishna, slightly emotional person, that's the way he expresses himself, Swami Vivekananda said it. In his, I think it was after his trip in Kashmir at the Shiv Bhavani temple, he told in conversations with the disciple, you'll see, he says, the disciple was giving all sorts of counter arguments why the Mother is not real. He said, whatever you may say, it seems to me I cannot escape the conclusion that there is a being which likes to call itself Mother. Does exist. So, here we have the testimony of great rishis like Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna that tell us God is real. And so therefore, it is not my experience yet, but I have seen enough of them, I've read enough about them, I've understood enough about them to have faith in their words. And that, combined with my own imagination, is the way I'm going to move forward. And that's what we do in worship. It is imagination, but it's an imagination based on the truth. So right now, we see our imagination is like this. I imagine myself to be a body-mind complex, psychophysical complex. And Vedanta says, you're not. You're pure spirit. And if we ask, what is spirit? Well, you can define it in different ways. Some people will say spirit is that which is not body or mind. That's a kind of circular definition. But whatever it is something that is not empirical, it's not rational, it's not reasoned out, and it's not changeful. That is, it's not in time, space, or causation. At the moment, I cannot recognize it in myself, but I can see some of this changelessness in great personalities. I can see it in the life of somebody like Sri Ramakrishna. Actually, I can even see it in the life of some of the great people that we know in our own, that we move with. We see that, just see the different way that people react to different situations. That tells you some people are more embedded in their body-mind consciousness and some less. You see, some people, for example, calamity can be occurring around them in terms of physical surroundings or even their emotional surroundings, but they're able to maintain a certain calmness. How is that? Clearly, that can only be if they're rooted in a presence or an awareness which is neither physical nor psychological. So, what I mean by to say this is that it's not my experience yet, but I'm seeing it in those who I respect, and therefore, through that, I can couple that with my own imagination. It moves me forward. It's not my experience yet, but my faith in them and my own imagination takes me forward. This is an important principle in spiritual life, that together with what we have read and understood gives us general principles, and then we use our intellectual understanding, but combine it with our own imagination and our experience of great people who embody those ideals to move forward. So as I said, I cannot recognize it in myself at the moment, but I see it in great personalities. Also, there is an idea that, as I said before, whatever I occupy my mind with, that I will become. And so the more these thoughts I am able to embody, the more that spiritual idea will become real. Okay, so having said that, let's go back to this question of the relationship of worship and love. To love and be loved is a fundamental need for human beings. You can give a person all the physical needs that are required, enough food and water. You might even give them all the psychological requirements that they have. But if there is no love in it, you will find that the person can't survive. To love and be loved is a fundamental need in human beings. And the reason it's fundamental is that love is not something that comes from outside. It is within. It is our own nature. So it's not enough to have bodily bonds. We need also to satisfy, to give expression to and recognize love. Now we all love something or other. Maybe we love our family members. Maybe some people love their possessions. Some people love money. It really depends. Where is our personality centered? Some people are family-centric. Some people are money-centric. Some people are eccentric. But in all cases, we're centered somewhere. So we all love something. What worship is teaching us is if we can guide that love, which is within us already and expressing in some way or other, if we can guide and direct that love to a spiritual ideal, then it will take us forward. That's the point of worshiping God. There is the beautiful prayer of Prahlada and to Narasimha, I think, right? To Narasimha, he prayed that attachment, that adoration that people feel for their material possessions and for their families, may I have that same love for thee. So, this worship, therefore, the essence of this worship is love. Love directed to God is what we're trying to do through worship. Now comes the question, we've decided God is real. And we've also decided the great people have taught us that it is possible to experience that God. In fact, spiritual life is the attempt to try to experience that God. Now the question comes, to the extent this makes sense, where is that God? So obviously we all have some answer to that question. When we come, we pray, for example, we bow down in front of the altar. We don't bow down in front of the coat rack. Right? Some people bow down in front of the kitchen. But generally we have an idea God is somewhere. And when we worship, we perform it at a place that we think somehow that God is more easily reachable. But now if you read again, try to understand this question from the point of view of the great teachers. What did they say? We have first Christ said the following. This is contained, I believe, in one of the Gnostic Gospels, so it may not be in the traditional Gospels. Lo here, lo there, the kingdom of heaven is within you. That is, that heaven or that God that you're searching is within you. This is Christ. He also said, cleave the wood, there I am. Raise the stone, there I am. So in other words, wherever you look, there I am. And this is consistent with the Vedantic teaching also. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Sarvam Idam Brahma. Everything here is a manifestation of that divine spirit. And the Isha Upanishad said, Isha Vashyam Idam Sarvam. That spirit, ruling force, dwells in all of this. In fact, the Isha Upanishad goes even one step further and says, not only does it tell us that God is located, in everything, but also tells us a very novel definition of renunciation. It says, Isa Vashim Vidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagadyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhujita Madhyadakasya Svitanam. That is, the ruling force dwells in all of this, even in the minutest portion. By that renunciation, enjoy. It's a very fascinating thing. I don't think this occurs anywhere else in any other Upanishad. The definition of renunciation, according to this Upanishad, is the awareness that Isha is manifesting in everything. The manifestation, being aware of spirit manifesting in everything is, according to this Upanishad, the definition of renunciation. So in one blow, he not only enunciates a very deep and profound spiritual principle, but also tells you a deep principle of yoga, and in practice, that renunciation, which is considered sort of a fundamental tool in the search for God, is cast in a completely different light. It's a very positive awareness of the manifestation of spirit. Now, if you have this kind of idea, you see this, it changes everything. It changes everything of your whole concept of what is worship. Sri Ramakrishna said once that he went to pick flowers from the bushes for worship, and then he felt, no, worship was already done. These flowers on these trees was as if worship of universal being had already been done. There is no need for me to pick the flowers and take them to the altar and offer them again. See that? What a profound vision. God that you're searching for, the God that you wanted to worship, is here, present in everything, and worship has already been done. And Swami Vivekananda also, when he returned from America, when he was speaking somewhere in South India, he said, told people, he was, I think, speaking near a Shiva temple, if your worship of Shiva is only in the temple, it is preliminary. He didn't say it's bad, it's preliminary. But the worship of Shiva that you should seek is the Shiva all around you, everywhere manifest. Now, you know this, in our own time, Swami Kalyanananda, who was a disciple of Swami Vivekananda, was sent by his teacher to Kankal, which is outside of Haridwar. And Swami Vivekananda's instruction was, actually Swami Kalyanananda asked, what can I do for you? What can I do? What is the Guru Dakshana? And he said, go to Haridwar and take care of the sick people there. I think mostly he's talking about sadhus, but many people go to Haridwar, Kankal as a pilgrimage. There is no hospital there, nobody to take care of them. Go there and take care of them. Now Swami Vivekananda's disciple, you see, he didn't tell him go to the Himalayas and meditate on God. He said go and serve the sick people there. Now, as far as I know, Swami Kalyanananda is not a doctor. He had no medical training. He just sent him there. So he went. What did he do? With whatever money he could make, he had 2 huts. In one hut he stayed, and the other hut he found somebody who was sick, he'd bring them, try to take care of them as best he could. That went on for a while. Some years later, slowly that institution grew. Eventually, a young brahmachari joined there, who later became Swami Sarvabhauma. And so he told us the story that Swami Kalyanananda told him. Namely, he asked him, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I'm going to the shrine." Swami Sarvabhauma. So I'm totally free. I'm going to the shrine. He said that there's another shrine. Go to the hospital. And just as you take flowers and offer it at the altar, take some medicines. Go around the ward and see what they need. And just as you recite some hymns and prayers at the altar, go and say some kind words. Kind words to the people there. Those will be your hymns. So this principle, Swami Kalyanananda was not just saying it, he lived it for decades. The idea that the worship of God that you started at the altar, locating God in one place, is in fact is possible on a much grander scale. That God is everywhere manifest, especially in those who offer you the opportunity to serve. It's interesting, in the Gita, Swami Prabhupada pointed this out to me. In the Gita, the question is asked, there's an echo coming in. In the Gita, Krishna is asked about the manifestation of God, and he tells him, I'm here, I'm in this, I'm in that, I'm in the taste in water, I'm in the womb. But then he says, wherever you see any manifestation of glory, something great, unusual, profound, know that a fraction of myself is there, a portion of my splendor is there, he said. That's in the Gita. But what did Swami Vivekananda say? Swami Vivekananda said, my God the poor, my God the miserable, my God the weak. It's interesting, so it's a different idea than in the Gita. He took it one step further. It's not only where there's splendor and strength and greatness, where there's just the opposite. That's also a manifestation of God. So this idea stands out very, very prominently, I would say, in the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. So we as descending from the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna Swami Vivekananda, especially have to take heart of this point. The worship of God begins in the altar, doesn't end there. And the philosophy of Vedanta is telling us that God is everywhere manifest. The mythology, the great personalities that preceded us showed that you can turn that philosophical principle into something very concrete. Manifested God is everywhere, then my worship, there must be a way to worship that God. And they've shown us a way how to worship that, through service. And you see, so there we have the new kind of worship. And we have also the new kind of ritual. The same thing that Swami Kalyananda said, whatever flowers you are offering at the altar, offer medicine to the sick. That's a kind of new ritual. And the hymns you were saying at the altar offer kind words. But kind words, you see, is not only to sick people. We can practice that all the time, for everyone we interact with. Now you see, there's another aspect to this, and it will be my final point. Spiritual life, according to Vedanta, is growth of the individual. It's not a prescription. It's not a dogma. You do this, you'll get this, and if you don't do this, you're not a Vedantan. There's no such thing. It's not a prescription. It is a matter of your personal growth. So if by sitting for meditation, I feel I'm growing, do it. But if every time I sit for meditation I fall asleep, it's not working. Don't do that. Find some other discipline for yourself. But both are equally good Vedantas. So Vedanta doesn't give you a sort of dogma or a prescription. Do this and not that. And so if it's a growth, it's got to be something. There's no way I'm going to grow in any significant or appreciable way if my sadhana is restricted to half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours maybe 5 hours. It has to be something that embraces the whole of my life. And this is what Swami Vivekananda's idea of worshiping God does. You see, it is something you can practice all the time, wherever you are, whoever you're with, whatever you're doing. The idea that everything I'm experiencing, whether it's persons, circumstances, good things, bad things, everything somehow is a manifestation of the divine. And if that's the case, I can interact with the divine through a new kind of worship that takes into account all of these. Suddenly makes your whole life spiritual life. You see, it is not only a certain morning and evening I do this, and the rest of the time I do whatever I like. Your whole life becomes spiritualized, and then what that means is one stops being a spectator. If you're not a spectator, then as a participant, you have a possibility of growth. If you're growing, you have the possibility of realizing the truth, realizing the goal, reaching the goal, and therefore making this your own experience. And until that happens, Swami Vivekananda says religion has not started for us. Imagine. I think Swami Brahmananda said, until you had Nirvikalpa Samadhi, religion hasn't started for you. Okay, we won't go that far. But at least this point must be there. As long as we fracture our life, this is my religious time and this is my rest of my time. There's a problem. There's a problem. And so until I make that unified and unite my whole life, everything I'm doing is part of my spiritual life. I'm not going to grow. So that's what we have now in this idea. And the Kali Puja especially is pretty remarkable for teaching us this. Because I believe the prayers there tell that she is both good and evil. You know, happiness and unhappiness, pleasant and misery, pleasure and misery. All of these things. So sometimes people will react to this teaching and say, just a minute now, a lot of bad things happen in life too. You mean that's God? The answer is yes. It is. And so that also is something that has to be internalized and digested. What it means is that actually, ultimately what happens in the world is irrelevant. What is most relevant is, am I growing? So my relationship should always be from that point of view. I don't waste my time thinking, is something positive, negative, good, bad? What is my reaction to it? Am I growing? Am I reacting in a way that I think is consistent with the spiritual life? If I am, then it's useful. So these are a few thoughts penned at short notice on worshipping God. And if you have any questions, please ask me.